Okay, folks, it's May 22nd, and we're going to group together here as members of the community and discuss recent improvements and releases from the major AI players and some of the not so major ones. So I've invited a few of our community here, and I'm going to ask you to just do a quick introduction to yourself, and then we'll get started. I've got a half-assed agenda off to the side here, okay?
Who do you want to go first?
Go ahead, Kevin.
All right, I'm Kevin. I'm an instructor at York University Continuing Studies for Digital Marketing. Also, I work with Stephen and Liz with the Me plus AI community here. So have background in journalism and content creation for search engine optimization. That's me in a nutshell. So thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
I'll go
Okay.
next. My name is Rebecca Boltzma. I am just kind of an AI enthusiast, I guess. I work in K-12 education communication, and I love to talk about AI. I live in Alberta, Canada, and I'm honestly just happy to be here.
Wonderful. Leslie?
And me. Okay, so of the many hats I wear, I guess the primary thing that I do is I write and optimize LinkedIn profiles and do LinkedIn training. Have known Stephen for a very long time, since the .com world. And he brought me into the Canadian Marketing Association, and I'm still working with the Canadian Marketing Association, helping people in career transition and so forth. So that's just
Yeah, and you do a fair amount of traveling in the States and speaking at conferences and that sort of thing. So
and talking about
Leslie's
AI and building chatbots and all that fun stuff. So yeah.
Yes, Leslie and I created our own little workshop where she built a custom GPT back in the early days of September, I think. They're quite trendy again, though, actually, custom GPTs. So you were
Or
ahead.
gems as we're calling them sometimes.
Yes, nice. All right, so what we'll do is I have a little list over here, a couple lists. I'm not going to talk about OpenAI at first. I figured we'd cover everything else and then get to the Scarlett Johansson gossipy bits at the end if we want to. But I've got a few lists from Perplexity of events that went on, and we can either discuss them or mention them or move on. But I do think, especially from the marketing and communications, Rebecca's a communications pro too, that Google is now testing AI overview. So it's basically kind of what, I mean, I'm guessing, but it's kind of what Perplexity was doing. Is that what I mean, I haven't seen them yet. I've seen the mock-ups, but that's going to shake up display search for sure.
I always think the Google announcements are interesting because the moral of all of the Google announcements are we haven't seen it yet, but they're telling us it's coming, right? So we don't know when we'll see it. There's still stuff we're waiting on from the last announcement. But yeah, if it does what it says it's going to do, it's going to change the game. And I don't know what it does for Perplexity, honestly.
Yeah. Kevin, any thoughts on that?
Well, I'm actually the kind of the thing in the background here is that I haven't been using Gemini for very much at all. I don't know if that's a Canadian aspect, some of the stuff that maybe hasn't rolled out to us lowly Canadians here, but I think what I'm waiting for is the impact it'll have on search generative experience for regular Google searching. Because as an SEO manager for a number of years, we've been sort of chasing Google's tail, determining where the algo changes happen and how to manifest the best content possible to rank. And so the rules have completely changed. And I still think the dust is way up in the air. I don't think we're really clear on how to best optimize a piece of content from a website perspective to hone in on where things are going to land. So I'm very interested to see how that rolls out because obviously being an SEO tool user for SEMrush, Moz, etc., they rely on set amounts of data to provide to their people. Now, my power might actually go out. We're having a little bit of a crazy thunderstorm here, but anyway, that's kind of where my background would be is I want to see how Google integrates it into their core business, which is search advertising still to this day, and how those things are affected. That's kind of where I'm interested to see things go.
Well, just think of the hundreds of thousands of hours of SEO optimization that is, I mean, I mean, hundreds of thousands of hours, it's millions of hours for sure. I mean, just to go back a million years to give it some perspective, I was working on TELUS was the client, and I had very little experience with SEO from the actual back end of it, kind of in the analytics and everything. And we had a full-time person at the agency who did nothing but SEO on the TELUS account. Like that's literally all she did. And when I sat and watched her work and helped her with the content side, that was my job. I was on the content and the account side. I was fascinated. And yes, Google has to walk a fine line here. It's their business on the one hand, and it could completely kill organic web traffic based on search, right? I mean, that's kind of what's up in the air here.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are sort of sitting back with their popcorn and waiting to see what decisions are made. Because I even find over the past, let's say now 3 months, my Google usage personally has decreased exponentially.
Sure.
I'm going to ChatGPT for majority, and I don't want to sound like I'm being naive in that regard, because obviously everything that you search in ChatGPT, if you're asking a question, you need to vet.
Yeah.
But with a grain of salt, of course, armed with a grain of salt, you go in and you ask it certain things. And I found, and I'm only going by, direct things that have helped me out. For example, working with different pieces of software. I'm a Logic Pro, now 11, but 10 user, religiously use that for music. And I've been asking it questions about how does side chaining work? How do you find this menu item? How do you, and it's directing answers, and I'm getting what I need. So regardless of it needing to be vetted, which is always, I would think, always going to be the case. And it was the case with Google as well. Like you would take you to a website and you have to determine whether the sources are accurate, and, all that work would kind of be on the user. But in its first sort of iterations, I find that ChatGPT hands down is a better experience because of its simplicity and the communicative nature of getting an answer via your question. And now with the voice integration, it's even more so because it just feels more natural. I think we were talking about this before, Stephen, about how much of a game changer that is, because we had to learn the behavior of Googling something, right? It became part of the vernacular.
Yeah.
30 years ago was not a thing, but then we had to adapt this behavior. And when it comes to the same type of interface with ChatGPT, with the voice recognition, it's like it feels so much. I'm gonna get lambasted for this, I'm sure, but it feels more human, that we're having a dialogue with something and it's giving us responses back, and it feels natural. And it's just I'm just amazed by where things have headed even in the past few months.
Literally. I don't want to get too far down the road to ChatGPT, but we'll get there. But I do, just speaking from me, I have gotten quite dependent on the Perplexity mix of links and content because they do it pretty well. And to your point, Kevin, we're all now programmed to decipher the Google perfect, spit out of like, ignore the sponsored link or like put it into grant. You know what I mean? We've been doing that for so long that it's ripe for a change. But again, if Google nails what Perplexity has kind of been doing and manages to somehow bring in the AI personalization, I don't know if they can, but like Google's late to the game for certain things, or later to the game, and then they have the power and the reach to crush it at times. But I was a big fan of what was the G community site? Google, what was it called, Leslie? Not Google World, Google Plus. How fast that's now a relic of ancient history. But the search side, to your point, Kevin, is so fluid and changing and has massive repercussions. I was chatting with Allison Garwood Jones, who's my friend, an illustrator and instructor. She teaches at U of T, and she teaches SEO, content generation, digital writing, specifically for marketers. And she's like, I don't know what to teach. She literally said over the weekend, and her course starts in August. I'm going to be a guest speaker, but her her course starts, but she was bitching to me in many ways. Like, I literally don't know what to put in the curriculum. And she really, if you think about it, she's got a perfectly valid concern there, right? Okay. I do want to talk about a couple other things. And this will sound, we'll get hardware geeky for a bit. I don't know whether you've noticed this, but only in the last 48 hours, I think, Microsoft has launched an entire new series of Surface laptops, and the hardware specs. I'm being my hardware geek for a second. The hardware specs are startling. Startling. And I mean, I don't, this is AI driven anyway, because they're co-branded with Copilot in the hardware. So it's like the chips are designed to interact with the Copilot AI. And we'll see how tightly it's integrated, but it's 40 trillion flops of per laptop, which is shockingly high. It's actually quite more powerful than the current MacBooks. So I just I just I just wanted to bring that up as an aside, because it was literally news. And it's I mean, I'm a Mac person, but it, hardware is hardware.
It sets a standard for Mac too, right?
Yes. And you can make an argument that kind of Mac has kind of been coasting on the hardware side in some ways. I don't know, but I mean, I don't know if you've seen people using the Vision Pro. I saw someone using it in Toronto. I mean, it really, you know, I would love to try one. I haven't tried it, but the people I know that have tried it have said, why am I going to wear my desktop on my forehead for,
Like
Rebecca?
I'd wear one, but I wouldn't wear it out in public, I don't think. Like I do it so I had like my secret dream of floor to ceiling monitors and like a
Right.
Star Trek Enterprise way, without having all the actual monitors. But I don't think I'd wear it like on the subway or to a restaurant. But I
No.
would get the Meta glasses. I actually think I'm going to get them just to see what the hype is about.
How much are they?
They're like $300
Oh, okay.
US. So like $1,000 Canadian.
Right.
Just
Yeah,
kidding.
but Rebecca, that's a huge difference from the Vision Pros. Aren't they like
Totally.
3,100 or 4,000 US, which is 10,000 Canadian, right?
Well,
So,
and you can wear them and you wouldn't even know. Like Kevin could be wearing them right now and we don't know, right? Which raises all the ethical questions
yeah, yeah,
about
yeah.
are they recording you taking pictures? But yeah, I'd wear the glasses. I might wait another generation. Oh, he took them off. I didn't give consent
Well,
to be recorded.
I mean, obviously, if it's Apple trying to do it, they're trying and they want to make it cheaper and everything. But no, I haven't even been tempted. And I mean, I think the world of computing is changing in so many fronts that it's kind of a gimmick one-off, because all those influencers that have them, they're now sitting in their cases, not even using
I
them.
actually did order a wearable. I pre-ordered a wearable. Like, I'm not super into them. I'm trying to remember what it's even called because I ordered it and I don't even think
The
it comes
the
to the
the
summer.
pin or the rabbit?
So it's not one of those mainstream-ish kind of ones. I'm gonna look it up, but it clips on like to your whatever, and it was
Yeah,
only 99 bucks. And apparently, like when you tap it, it will record the conversation and you could talk to yourself, which is how I'd use it. I just kind of recap something while I was driving or write myself a
yeah,
to-do list, and then it stores it in written content in like a cloud where if you need
right.
to remember what your doctor said or you're it's just kind of a quick, I don't know how tacky it'll be. I just am fascinated by what they're trying to do with wearables. And sometimes I just need to make a note to myself without
Yeah.
like fumbling, unlocking my phone, opening my notes app, finding a blank note. Like if I could just be like, tap, tap, I need to remember to do this. Or here's an interesting thought I had for a LinkedIn post or something I'll keep you posted. And once I remember what it's called, I'll tell you.
Yeah, there was two I was following. I think Kevin and you and I have discussed it. One is called the Rabbit and one was called the Humane Pin or something. They both came out, they both got pretty scandalous reviews. And I mean, but I'm with you, Rebecca. There's gonna be the breakthrough product on the cheap and cheerful AI side for sure. If they're playing around with that many products already, it's only a matter of time in many ways. And really, our phones have become pretty heavy and clunky, right? Mine is. it's, I mean, you want a big phone, and then of course it's, it's not, yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's get to some of the open AI stuff. This one I found a little disturbing, is the committee for the internal team on an open AI, and it's called Super Alignment, was disbanded. Now this was, and then a couple of them were public about saying that OpenAI has lost its way in terms of ethics and product development. So I mean, I don't know. It's causing a criticism of it, and I guess if you add the Scarlett Johansson topic onto it, it's kind of an open AI backlash in some ways.
Did you see some of those ethical conversations that were going back and forth between about Ilya
Yeah.
and between like the Meta guy, Jan LeCun?
Yes. That's
Just
what I'm,
about how, yeah, and those have really, really spun off. People saying, oh, it's not even as smart as a cat, so why are we even worrying about this? AI is not a big deal and it's not that smart. I was like, I'm sorry. Like, I don't think a cat, there's any risks associated with something being as smart as a cat, but I see tons of risks. But some of those conversations caught me off guard because there was so much traction on them and on AI safety not being a big deal. And that was the first I'd kind of heard from that camp vocally.
yeah, I think, and it plays into people's ignorance and fears too, if they're not, because so many people, I mean, who are not interested in AI are coming at it from an uninformed perspective, and really, I think we're at a point where the actual talking about it and sharing and community aspect of it is so important, because that's how we're going to ensure that we get good governance. I mean, it's also, I think, Rebecca, a race to the almighty dollar too.
Yeah. I don't, it's strange to me because as somebody who feels like I'm on top of it and have a pretty good view of the landscape, that really kind of rocked me. And I can see how people who didn't know anything about AI or AI ethics or AI safety or any of the conversation, who prefer to be ignorant about it, would just jump on that, like you said, and just be like, oh, well, these head scientists are saying this is not that big a deal and AI is not going to be that smart and we have nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true. I'm already seeing a lot we need to worry about. But again, is that from the development perspective, or is that from like a legal framework? Like there's a lot we need to worry about in terms of governing this, making laws around it, having guidelines, and is that out of the hands of the developers at that point? It gets gray.
It gets gray, and also there's so many moving pieces that, I mean, our governments can't even keep themselves, running. Like, it's a sad indictment, but we can't really trust our governments to even get the subways running on time. I mean, I hate to sound like a grumpy old man, but if they can't do that, then they certainly are not going to get their heads around AI governance. There was a TikTok I saw the other night where they interviewed just how these shit disturbers are on TikTok. They were just talking to like senior US politicians, like the most senior ones, the older senators, and everything. And they were like, what do you know? And like some of them were just so funny about it. They were like, not a damn thing. Like it was horrifying at the same time that it was slightly amusing, because they didn't even bother to pretend. And none of us know all that much, even if we're learning every day about it. But at the same time, the grassroots governance, or like our politicians, should at least be looking and keeping us informed. That's why people like Elena are fascinating to me, from the Human Feedback Federation. Like she's she used to work at RBC. She started this organization, and it's really smart programmers and AI machine learning experts, lots of PhDs here that are working on human. And she was, sorry, I should have a link handy, but she posted on LinkedIn like 2 days ago. It was just like a laundry list of the mediocrity of AI products. I think it was her response to the announcements from last week. because she's looking for actual, dramatic improvements and everything. And what she saw was incremental. So anyway, yeah, I think the PR and the communication side of AI, it's like anything else that's in this industry. It's up and down and all around the place, right? I mean, I will hand it to OpenAI, at least when they did, unlike Google, when they do their product launches, they do those demos. Now they're a little cringy. They can be a little cringy, the demos. I thought some of them from last week were, but also they were very, very startling and compelling too.
It's kind of nice and to see them in real time, though, to see them kind of screw up. Like, I like that approach, and I'm sure it's contrived, it's marketing. And Sam Altman even pointed it out on Twitter, like the vibe between their launch and the very polished,
Yeah.
nothing live, nothing to chance Google launch that was so long. OpenAI was 30 minutes, and it's just all part of a broader marketing strategy. But there was some criticism from the OpenAI one as well, just in terms of how comfortable are we going to be interrupting human voices moving forward now, because all the demos, they had to keep interrupting and talking over this female demo voice, which is a whole other conversation. But yeah, it's the risk of kind of doing something live, but OpenAI, it's how they roll, I guess. They're a little more of that, we're a quirky startup vibe.
Yeah, and to your point, Rebecca, it's precisely true. The Google was like a massive global trade show kind of vibe, which also I'm an end user. I used GPT 4.0 that evening. Like it wasn't, you know what I mean? It wasn't like 3 months from now or 8 months from now if I get Gemini Plus. So let's talk about OpenAI multimodal side. Have you used it? It's been a week.
I don't think it's available, like the voice stuff anyway, like all the voices are still the old ones. I don't think they're rolling it out for a little bit longer. The newer, 4.0 is faster, and like I wish I could just default it to always stay on that one instead of when I log in. Sometimes I'll be like, why does this suck? Why am I on 3.5? Why is this even an option? Like, just take this off my list. But yeah,
I'm using the app, and it keeps it is, there are new features on that one. I'm using the app on this actual laptop, but it's 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 an interesting product, to be honest with you. It's not on Windows yet. And also, when they rolled it out, you didn't have access to it until they let it. And I mean, I got it from a Discord server, and people were like, "Are you sure this is real?" And it was real when I downloaded it. I have the Plus account, and then on Thursday night, it became active early. So that was Thursday night. And I told Kevin this, but I'll admit it. I sadly laid in bed, brought up the client, and spoke to it for an hour and a half. And
wow, I didn't realize it was available on the desktop one. I kind of put that on the back burner. I was waiting for it on the app because that's how I'm used to interacting with it.
You can talk to it on the mobile side, but no, the desktop app, and also it's shockingly fast.
Like the new voices you have access to?
Yes, they took down Scarlett. They took her down last night.
Interesting.
Yes, we can get to that too, but I have the new voices. I don't know if I have the new capabilities, but it sure feels like it, Rebecca. It's
Nice.
blisteringly fast, and I treated it as if it was a Jewish grandmother for a while, and I literally said, "Talk to me like you're my." Like I went through some modalities in terms of giving it context, and it even did some voices. Like,
Wow.
I
Yeah, I'm
know.
excited to try that.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
we're talking about the actual talk and back and forth that thing, because I came into a roadblock with how do you activate it, not thinking that you tap on the mobile app, you tap the headphone icon on the
Yeah.
bottom right. That was revolutionary to me.
Yeah.
And for the longest time I was stuck with tapping the voice to command, and
Oh,
then all of a sudden it was like, oh no, okay, well here's how we activate it. I found it fascinating because you find yourself switching back and forth between talking to it, and then depending on what input it requires, you say, well, hold on a second. I'm just gonna put you on hold in quotes and get the text I'm referring to and copy it into the chat. But at least it keeps a running record of all of the dialogue, and it keeps a text record so that it's like it's already transcribed. So it keeps the context of the earlier discussion as before. Is that what we're talking about right now, Rebecca? Like, are you saying that you have or you have not used the 4.0 voice back and forth thing, or are we talking about something else?
Sorry, I think I turned it on accidentally, so I don't know if you can hear that it's talking to me. When I went on to start interacting with it, because I use the voice feature a
Yeah.
lot on my app,
Right.
I still had the old voices without all of without all the inflection and all the
Oh, I see.
personality. And they still haven't updated on my actual app. And the last I'd heard, they were rolling it out gradually.
Yes.
But I hadn't really played around with the desktop app yet because I've been down a Gemini rabbit hole. So it'll be interesting to try out some of those more emotive voices. I've been so curious about them and watched every single demo that's fantastic.
It's I don't know whether it's kind of funny. I asked it whether I have the new voice capabilities, and it said not yet. And then it was acting as if I did. So it's confusing me. And to your point, Kevin, sometimes I think the OpenAI AI user interfaces are so minimalistic and so they release them without much instructions that, not clicking the headphones is perfectly understandable in some ways. When I got it the first time, I was showing it off in Florida to scare the old people in my father's community, and it was pretty clunky, and the latency was not at all what, it was like say it and then wait for the prompt. But no, the app is, and also it requires a pretty modern laptop, Rebecca. It only runs on an M machine, so anyway, but I can tell they're using it for Plus users to test features too. I can upload screenshots. You can upload the screen, not video yet, but you can upload the screen. So they're getting ready for the full multimodal. I mean, and that's really what we're talking about here, even with Gemini and what Google announces, the multimodal capabilities. And really, I think that was the big news. I don't know if you saw the tutoring demo, but for me, that was just amazing.
That education piece is just going to be so huge. That's the spaces that I'm usually speaking in are all connected to education and that level of education. So that's going to be something that is going to be encouraging and terrifying for a lot of educators, right? Who are already having to deal with such diverse classroom needs, but then also still want to be at the wheel and, like what's stopping a kid from, as soon as their teacher walks away, saying, okay, just solve it for me. Like,
Yeah.
there's questions, but overall it's incredible. There's so much research behind, if every kid just had a tutor, every kid could succeed. Like there's research that backs it up, and now we have it.
It's
It's amazing.
even got a name, the Bloom Sigma 2 dilemma, something. I should Google it in a second. Bloom Sigma. So, and that's what you're talking about, Rebecca, where they did this huge amount of research. And the 2 Sigma means if you have actual personalized tutoring, you learn twice as much. And that was Bloom, the famous instructional designer and learning professor. I'm ruining my own joke by forgetting the name of it, but it's the dilemma kind of thing. And there you go. We could cross that final line if we do it right. But I never thought about that. You're right, Rebecca. 2 seconds later, the instructor walks away, solve this problem for me, and hide it from the instructor there. And then, right, I know, but that kind of just makes the human teaching and the human instructor aspect even more important, really.
Totally. And it always has been. Kids are always going to find ways to cheat. There's probably kids wearing the Ray-Ban glasses right now with, Meta's put multimodal AI into those glasses. We saw Google has a pair queued, ready to go, and that's going to be an issue, right? If suddenly you're taking a test, you could spin forever on the what ifs, but This is
know.
crazy. All of
Well,
it.
Well,
It's
and
magic.
Go ahead, Leslie. You
But yeah,
want
one of my son's friends has got his telephone in between his legs. So his smartphone is between his legs, and he's using chat even during a proctored exam.
no.
Yeah. So he says, if the teacher walks past and the teacher says, "What do you got?" He's already got an answer of like, why are you looking between my legs, sort of thing, right? So
Yep.
the kids are during a proctored exam. He's got
Mhm.
ChatGPT, figuring it out. I don't know how but they're one step ahead of us insofar as, oh,
Yeah.
you know,
They always have been. Like
yeah,
teenagers are one step ahead of us, or kids in technology in general, in being devious, like we were, they are, and
it's innovative in a way. Like I sort of admire the moxie. Like my son uses it, and I'm like, fine. He's in his last term in high school, and he's using ChatGPT for all of his. He didn't go back to in-person school, and he's like basically asynchronous learning using ChatGPT, using and then repurposing it and putting it into a secondary so that it doesn't look like it's coming from ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the
Yeah.
kids they're going to use it, and I'm like, good
well,
for
we
you.
use it at work, right? Like
Yeah,
that's like
see,
telling kids they have to not have cell phones, in college or whatever, where we all have our cell phones every day. We're Googling stuff.
Yeah.
That's, we're using it.
I
I
think
don't
Well,
know.
as
and
long
this,
as,
go
yeah.
ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, as long as the core element there is explain it to me. Don't just solve it for me. Explain why this works. And the whole aspect of having a tutor is so that you get to ask that person specific questions about the areas where you have gaps.
Right.
And I mean, always people are going to try to game the system, sure. But I think for the students that really want to get the point across, or learn it in such a way that it sticks, it's a fantastic tool for that, because there's so often where the classroom environment is not conducive to someone putting their hand up and asking a
Right.
question and interrupting everybody. I mean, I even see that in webinars. If people, nobody, or in the courses that I teach, nobody wants to put their hand up and ask a question that's going to slow everybody down. But if you have the mechanism to say, walk me through this, here's where I got stuck, and everyone, that's going
Yeah.
to be different for every individual.
Right.
I think that's a huge bonus. And if we, this is one of these situations where it's like we need to lean into it as opposed to
Right.
try to remove it. Because I agree with Leslie. It's like it's gonna be used. There's no way around it. It's how we handle integrating it in a sort of logical way.
Well, and if you take it all the way, and I've always been fascinated by adaptive learning, or the ideal of adaptive learning. If you factor in a memory where it's remembering the students' successes, achievements, capabilities, the nuances of the learner themselves,
Mm.
regardless of the age, the ability for the model to suggest, support, bring in, oh, maybe you didn't know that. I use the example of pivot tables in some of the things I've written. Whereas, like in marketing side, there's analytics, and here's my spreadsheet of 30,000 records and 16 regions, and it costs thousands of dollars, and what am I the hell supposed to do with it? And I've done case studies where, here you go, Leslie, here's the case study with the data, figure it out. And then some of the learners just basically kind of had not experienced pivot tables or the ability to use Excel or understand how to create pivot tables or manage that much data. And they might have been great marketers, but they were stuck on that skill. So I use that as an example. Whereas swoop, in comes the model with your mini tutorial on pivot tables, even using the data right in front of you, ideally, right?
It's a good segue into some of the OpenAI capabilities of now being able to bring in all of your Google
Mm-hmm.
Sheets, your
Mm-hmm.
Google Docs, which I still have questions about, like security of things like that, but also that Google now can do that. So I was trying to build a specific kind of spreadsheet. I asked Gemini. It didn't build it for me, but I know that's coming. But it told me exactly, go to this cell, do this, do this, do this, do this. I think the next step is it just builds it for me.
Yeah.
But I have questions about giving Google access to like my G Suite, or giving OpenAI access to my
Mm-hmm.
G
Yes.
Suite. I don't know if
That's
they've kind of earned that level of trust from me
no,
yet.
I totally, and all it's going to take is one bad breach, and that could be, and that also, I mean, I don't know. I shared mine too, Rebecca, 2 nights ago or last night ago with OpenAI, but I only shared the Me and AI Google Workspace,
Yeah.
not my personal workspace, which God only knows. Like, it's also such a mess too. I mean, not a mess, but like it has
Yeah.
really personal information,
And
billing.
other people's info, and
Yes,
whereas
yes,
Google has access to it, like
right,
they already have it. We already kind of trust them. So if they can, some of the demos they showed of go in and find everything related to this, or find every email from my kid's school and summarize what I need to know for me, or find anything that I talk about summer camp anywhere in my entire G Suite. That's the kind of game changer that's going to save
Yeah.
people hours of their lives.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to see how in both cases you had OpenAI quote beating Google to the punch in terms of the news about their launch the day before, and then rolling out the integration of, oh yeah, now we work with Google Docs. It's like I saw that come up as an announcement, and I was like,
right,
well, I'll
right,
try it out and see. And I was underwhelmed because my biggest thing is the formatting. And we talk about pivot tables, we talk about formatting. If you have like, why would someone need to know how to work or create a pivot table using Excel specifically, and then have to relearn that for numbers or relearn
right.
that for Google Sheets, where you could have that that sort of workflow processed for you and get into the data. Um, that's where I see a real leg up, and I haven't tried Gemini for. I mean, Rebecca, if you're able to use Gemini to leverage it in that way and say, can you format this document for me? I don't know if you've had good experience with that, because I have not yet, but maybe I need to give it another shot.
I know that that's one of the things that was announced, but I don't think it's capable yet. How
Okay.
I've used it is saying, hey, back in January when they first announced it, I said, hey, go into my email inbox, find every e-receipt from December and put them into a spreadsheet for me and calculate how much I spent like on shopping at
Yeah, yeah,
Christmas.
yeah.
And the math was wrong and it missed some things. It was brand new. I think it's probably gotten better, but you know, I think it's well on its way. If I say do that and then also create, they did a ton of demos that show like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
categorize it, put it in this, add it to my budget, and keep a running chart of
Right.
everything that needs to happen every time a new receipt comes in.
Yeah.
I don't think it's there yet, but they're saying it's coming, and I feel like it's closer than it's ever
Well, and
been.
if
Huh.
anyone's going to do that at first, it's going to be Google, just because of what they have. I mean, I guess what we're talking about too, and let's talk about it, is assistance, the next level, AI assistance, because even, like, do we need a prompt writing framework anymore? If it, like, really, you know what I mean? I'm working on the Risen framework for me and AI. It's like, is this going to be relevant in 3 months? Like, and I guess that begs the question for me is, how will we be training these assistants, or how will they, because I think this capability is coming for sure. Like it's like, take the Zapier out of the equation. The model's going to do it for me, right? Fine. But we're going to have to train the assistants to some degree.
Will we though? Because if you think about it, if they can see our screen and watch everything we do for a day or a
Yes,
week and suddenly see, oh, well, every time she gets there, first thing she does is check her
yes.
emails. And then every time she gets this email, we notice that she does this with it. And every time she's in this program, we notice she does this, and
Hmm.
this is how she organizes things. It's, isn't that machine learning? Like it figures out and then
Really
it
is, Rebecca.
learns.
It
And
really
so I
is.
don't know if we're going to have to tell them what to do anymore. I think that's the scary part. Where's the line on that, right? Like how much do we give them access to?
Well, and
But it's
like you were
amazing.
saying before, where are the areas that we want them to stay out of, right? Right? Are my bank records offline, right? Because it's all in our
But
personal lives, it's all mixed up.
that capability exists, right? Like we saw that with, let's say when OpenAI people started getting mad that their website data was being scraped without consent.
Right.
They released that blocker for the common crawl so that if you added it to your website, OpenAI couldn't scrape your website. So like 90% of mainstream media outlets right now don't allow OpenAI to scrape their data, which means as a news source, OpenAI is not very trustworthy. Total side note, but I just read a really interesting article about how the right-wing outlets are intentionally letting OpenAI scrape their data, hoping it will skew the algorithm a little more right-leaning because there'll be so much more right content and if the left is all blocking it. But maybe there'll be some sort of way that we can pick and choose or have some sort of block on which sites, as it's watching us, as we're accessing, as it, are off limits, or maybe there'll be regulations saying banking information is automatically confidential or excluded, or psychology records, like the implications.
Health record.
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, that runs us right up to our governments, who we really, or point. I mean, who else though? I mean, it does beg the question: are we on the verge? And I mean, you hear comments about this, and someone was raving on TikTok about being a techno optimist, saying that this will trigger us to reevaluate in many ways how we live, how we're governed, what kind of governments we want. I mean, I don't want to get all Rebecca up Sunnybrook Farm here, sorry, but like to be naive, but could this trigger just a very positive revolution in the way we live our lives? Are we asking too much of it?
Well, I think we're already starting to, I mean, let's think of this realistically. We have had antiquated technologies listening to us for the past several years. All the information, all the dialogue, and I don't mean to sound tinfoil hatty here, but it's there's an element of reality to how much these things retain information on a daily basis, right? And we all kind of talk about how spooky it is and everything like that. But here we have something that might take it the next level and be an applicable assistant that could quite literally save us hours of time throughout the day, and actually solve some of these issues that we're talking about. And it's the same problem exists of how much you're going to disclose from your banking records, from your health records, etc. But I mean, let's be honest, it's all right now, it's all up in the cloud as it is. And and again, I don't want to be, I think there is the potential for a huge positive movement for sure. I think it's up to us as kind of stewards of ushering in this time period to say, here's how we decide to use it. And we want to raise awareness to people so that, eventually it might make it up to the Senate. This stuff exists, and we need to be mindful, and we need to educate the greater populace about how to conduct yourself using it. Here's how to get the most out of it, et cetera. And, we can only really help each other with what we've got access to and control, right?
I'm such a skeptic. I just feel like there's always people who ruin it for everybody. Like, honestly, like I feel like there's going to be people who go into the politics of it for the wrong reasons, or, people who slant it for political gain, or people who tinfoil hat it, or we see that with technology all the time.
The almighty dollar is always going to, that's where the control is where the dollar is, right?
Like we couldn't even agree on, we can't even agree on the most basic things, in society nowadays. Like even just the most basic things, like even what does being a good person mean? Or, like science, or things that you'd think would be a non-starter, a no-brainer. I just don't know how we can't even really get together and say, okay, as humanity, I hope we can get together and say, this is what's best for humanity.
And what's discouraging about that is that the real potential, like there's our personal life with AI and tools that enable it. And I always use this example too. It's the ability to look at 100,000 mammography exams, tests, and find the strange behavior that actually makes a difference in women's health, or when a cancer causes isotopes, you know what I mean? Where instead of 30 Swiss researchers studying in a lab, we use it to solve real problems or real impact for a world. It's hard to feel it slagged when, we've got crazy people standing up and make a political gain about it. But yes, I know. I mean, even in my building, like there's an argument in my building now. I live in a tall building, and people are letting their dogs pee on the terrace and then washing it off, and then it's cascading down onto all these people's terraces. And I'm like, how, really, did you really not think that was going to happen?
Like the be a good person boundaries should be clear, and they're just not. And I just don't think, even for something that small scale, how do we scale that up to AI and all agree on? I'm maybe I'm just in a negative Nancy mood. I want to believe the best in humanity, and I do it in lots of ways, but
It's kind of when Rebecca said that, because I haven't watched all the videos, but to say that people are interrupting the AI too, that's going to have a big societal effect on things, right? Where if we're engaging with these bots in human-like ways, then things are going to start to move in a very, like, from society standpoint, right? Like we see this with our phones and our distraction, and we're like, most of us are spending our waking hours doing this instead of interacting with other people. So I think that's really interesting to sort of think about the cascading effect of interrupting.
And it will foundationally, sorry, as I interrupt you. Sorry,
No,
I have a bit of a lag. Like it'll just foundationally, we already seeing it foundationally change the way we communicate. We saw phones do that, right? We just overcorrected so hard to everything being a written, brief message and communicating within certain short ways, or an email and a text message, less face-to-face. And suddenly that might change how we communicate as well. We just get more comfortable. And especially if the majority of the voices used are female voices, what does that mean? That people get extra comfortable talking over female voices. Not that that's ever been a problem in history, but I'm just, could be.
Only all of recorded civilization at this point. But let's get to as we wind down, let's get to the end of it. So the big news in many ways, and they're related, from last week, was the making of 4.0 free or open to everyone. So, and that got a lot of attention. And then the conversational interfaces, which, where the Scarlett Johansson. I read a very long piece. It was really funny. They put it up yesterday or the day before on OpenAI's site. They responded to the issue, and this is what they said. They did approach her back in September, and they gave, if you're interested, you should read it. It's on the OpenAI site. They documented the entire process of training the 5 voices, how they selected them. They are voice actors. They were hired and they were pitched to be voice actors who could speak multiple languages. Then they're all professionals, apparently. And they recorded the voices in September, October timeframe. And Scarlett Johansson said no. And their argument is that's not Scarlett Johansson's voice, and there was no real effort to duplicate her voice. So there's that side of the argument. Well, Scarlett Johansson says it does sound like her. Now, I don't know. I do think it sounds like her.
Ironically, like I was on a flight home the night before the announcement, and I watched her. I'd never seen it, and so it was super fresh in my mind.
You did really? Circumstantially?
Just I was like, I keep hearing about this, and so it was very fresh in my mind. And it does sound a lot like her, but I don't know if there's any way you can prove it. I don't think if you were to if there's such thing as, there must be some sort of voice analysis, it's not her. Do I think they intentionally picked a voice that sounded like her? Of course, because Sam Altman tweeted her as a one-word tweet the day of the launch. So he wanted people's minds to go there. I'm in public relations. This was all contrived, obviously. And now they're getting some blowback, but they also have deniability, right? Like you can't prove it. Just because my voice sounds like somebody else.
And from a
where's the
perspective, and from a comms perspective, they're owning the her connection and being arguably the first out of the gate with something like her. Now, it's funny you say that. I watched the original movie and I hated it so much I only got through like 45 minutes. I didn't even watch to the end of it because it kind of, it was like 2003 or 4 or something.
Was it like 14?
Oh, okay. All right. So not way back then, but I remembered watching it and not liking it. But clearly we are here with the conversation side. I did that long session, and what happened was, and I really, I was a little cringy about it, but you start to fade away from you start to interact, you start to feel as if you are talking to a sentient human being in some ways. Now, I know consciously it's not, but at the same time, I actually think, we're living in an epidemic, ironically, of loneliness in some ways too. We have all these social networks. I think the therapeutic conversational side of this is something that people aren't going to be surprised about.
Towards the end of that movie, there's like a scene where kind of there's like a glitch and he kind of loses contact with his AI and he's panicking. Like he doesn't know how to function. He's running wild through the streets, trying to probably get to the headquarters of wherever this is. And he at one point looks around and realizes there's thousands of people all around him who are all just fully interacting with their AI and not with each other. And so I'm with you. I see like, yes, for the loneliness epidemic, I've always said, like, when I'm old, based on some of the problems we see in nursing homes, I want a robot to take care of me that will make sure everything gets done. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of, but at the same time, I just worry that I've seen this in myself. I would just sometimes rather talk to the AI or like rather it's just more efficient or there's less mess or it's more available. And I wonder I don't know, how we balance that. Or like me, I overcorrected back to a point where all I wanted was the human interaction. I kind of this whole cycle over the last year and a half, I got super deep in it. And then I was like, I prefer like real people. But yeah, it's really easy to forget. And there's people who their entire lives live in this virtual reality through video games and interacting like with
Yeah.
people virtually that way, or even social media, Snapchat. Like people are already existing virtually in these spaces without, they're not real people, they're avatars, they're messages. And at what cost? But how do we stop it?
Well, and also in the way that my Apple Watch yells at me when my remixes of Whitney Houston are too loud in the gym. Like it yelled at me this morning. Turn down your volume. Like maybe we also get to a point where the models themselves realize or understand that human to human connection is important as well. I mean, we're giving it a benefit of doubt there, but you know what I'm
Like
saying.
social media, where it when can tell when you're slowing down your scroll, it instantly hits you with something that will be a dopamine hit to keep you on there longer. It's like Leslie said, it comes all the way back to that almighty dollar and who's controlling it and who's running it. And you hope the right people are in charge.
I have to
Yeah, you
think
do.
that there's a place for a little bit of let's sort of put a tinge of hope in here because
Yeah.
we're kind of going in this kind of dystopian direction.
Yes.
But I think in general, what I'm starting to see is the need for us to get back to authenticity. And there's as a musician, and knowing and I didn't comment on the thread that came out recently about that platform where you can generate a song in a minute. I think that's fab. It's intriguing technology, but as a musician, it's that's where there's a bit of a line for me as an adoption. I can totally see where AI is helpful to fill in the blanks when it comes to writer's block and for generating ideas, etc. But
Yeah.
the counter movement that might occur is, and it's already actually in some cases starting to occur, is I would prefer to go and see a live performance
Yeah.
where I know it's an authentic performance and I can
Sure.
see the person and I can see that whatever. I'm interacting with the environment. I was going to say smell the sweat, but that was like, well, that's
Yeah.
probably too gross. But the whole experience is there. And I think as long as we're cognizant of what belongs as a human experience and that we have the capability to differentiate and to really compartmentalize where we want to be using the technical tools at our disposal, be it AI, be it the printing press, be it whatever, we have the ability to sort of parse. And I don't think there's ever not going to be a place for human interaction, right? Even though we've got all these tools facilitating the experience. So I'd like to think that as we progress, it becomes yet another tool at our disposal, albeit an extremely powerful one. But of course, they said the same thing about the web.
Yeah.
This is revolutionary. It changes things, and it has. It's changed everything.
No one was ever going to go to a store and buy pet food again in 1999. No one was ever. But
Yeah,
look, Kevin, to your point, what it should do is make those experiences even more precious because they are authentic,
yeah,
because it is human to human. Because, if you're sitting next to someone who's playing a guitar in an amazing way and singing, and that's a true human, not a robot, and that should be more precious. And I'm kind of a hopeless optimist about this because really what it should do is bring us together as humans, and that's kind of what we're not seeing from our political, but we haven't seen that on other fronts as well. But I think I agree, and that's kind of again why Liz and I kind of started the community. It was like, well, wait a minute, like let's have people talking about AI and how they're using it. And what I love about where we started was with a lot of my connections, Leslie included, and Rebecca yourself, and all of us are educators. And a year ago, it was like, they're not allowed to use it. We're cheating. We're going to run cheating detectors. Funny how that has gone really kind of by the wayside now. I mean, that doesn't mean it's not disrupting, because I do think education is in for a couple of years here, serious disruption.
I love what you said, Kevin. Somebody said, like a big kind of tech person said, if you're going to invest in anything, invest in live sports, because that's something that people are going to like. It's going to be fully human athletic, human ability. I went to Hamilton last weekend on Broadway, and I just remember thinking like AI could never, like just the
Right.
passion, that is the human experience, and that is the part that we are going to value more than ever. I would not want to watch robots act that out or
No,
sing it or even write it, So
no.
I think those things and those interactions will be even more valuable. I love
All
that.
right. Well, let's end on that positive note, shall we? There you go. What we're doing. Thank you. Thank you so much for this random kind of Wednesday conversation, but we're going to put it up on the site. Thank you so much, and keep coming back, checking the news, and thank you all for your time today.
Thanks, Stephen. Great to see you,
Bye.
Rebecca. Great to see you, Leslie.
Yeah,
Great to see you
I learned a
guys.
lot.
Take care. Have a great rest of the week.
You
See
too.
ya.